They say Vista at the top. Genie Gang has also designed the Vista Towers. There will be 3 towers that will form a stairway walking upward from Lake Michigan. Tallest of these towers will be 1,186 feet tall. That'll make Vista the 3rd tallest building in Chicago and the tallest in the world by a female lead architect. So we're looking forward to this one. In fact, we're getting another first with Vista. They've done the math. They figured out this building would get too much wind. That would cause it to sway too much, so they've reserved one floor to be what's called a blow-through floor. It'll act like a huge vent. The wind will pass right through it. That'll reduce a lot of the wind resistance on the side of the building and eliminate a lot of the sway. You can also see the silver building on the left-hand side with the horizontal lines. That is our Swiss Hotel by Harry Weiss, one of 2 triangle-shaped skyscrapers in downtown Chicago by Harry Weiss. The other one, our Metropolitan Prison, but this one is a nice hotel with one corner facing the Chicago River. So 2 of the 3 sides get a great view of this river, and in that gap just to the left of the Swiss Hotel, you're about to see a blue building with a hole in the side appear. It's our Blue Cross Blue Shield building. Designed specifically to rise upward after it was first completed in 97, stood at 33 stories tall. That's where you see the hole in either side. Then by 2010, stood at 57 stories tall. If Blue Cross Blue Shield wants a taller one, they can start construction one more time. It has a reinforced foundation and space in the top for elevator shafts and mechanical properties necessary to rise upward once more. But let's take one last look at the Aqua building. If you get a chance to walk down Upper Columbus Drive, right next to Maggie David Park, do not miss an opportunity to stand at the base of the Aqua and look directly up. You will see a vision that looks like puddled footprints in the sand. It's amazing. The only building I know of in the world with a feature anything like this. If you're looking for the Aqua, ask for the Radisson Blu Hotel. It's inside the building. But directly behind me right now, we've got the 2nd tallest building in the city of Chicago. That is our Trump Tower and International Hotel. Designed by Adrian Smith, who was with Skidmore, Owings & Merrill at the time. He did not want to block out the other architecture on our riverfront. He wanted to highlight it, and he did that with these setbacks on the building. They're there to match buildings around in height. First one at the top matches East Van Room's AMA building. The black one just to the left of the Trump Tower. Second one down matches Bertrand Goldberg's Marina City Towers. Those 2 corn cobs on the left-hand side. And that 3rd setback at the bottom, that matches a cornice at the 14th floor of the Wrigley building. That well-decorated 14th floor where William Wrigley Jr. himself had his office. And when William Wrigley Jr. first set up at Chicago's Columbian Exposition World Fair of 1893, he brought 2 products with him. One of them was powdered soap, the other one was juicy fruit gum. One of those was a little more popular than the other, and it wouldn't be long before Wrigley Chewing Gum would become a household name. So when designing a new headquarters for Wrigley in the 1920s, they used a similar style of architecture as used in the Columbian Exposition. Beaux-Arts style architecture, created in Paris, France, it translates to fine arts, and often with Beaux-Arts, will incorporate elements of classical architecture into more modern building techniques. So even though this building is designed to look as though it's made out of stone, it stands on an inner skeletal structure. We've got a French Renaissance box and a Spanish revival clock tower modeled after the Ronda Tower in Sevilla, Spain. That left tower completed 1921, right one 1924. There used to be a train that used to run between these 2 towers on the lower level, would go all the way down to Navy Pier, turn around, and come back again. But just across the street from the Wrigley building, you've got a brand new Apple store being built on some very historic ground. That is Pioneer Court, where Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable built the first permanent residence in this area. He also built a trading post, so that's where we did our first shopping. Very fitting that it marks the beginning of our magnificent mile. But right now is a great time to get your cameras out and get ready to bleed upward, because we're about to go under, or we're going under the DeSable Bridge. As soon as we come out, you get a great view looking upward at our 2nd tallest building, standing 1,388 feet to the top of its spire, our Trump Tower. You've seen this building. If you've seen Transformers Dark of the Moon, you saw Sam Witwicky and Bumblebee float to the top of this building to save Carly. Carly's got to jump off onto Bumblebee's flying ship, which crash lands over here on Wacker Drive. You also see the Sentinel and Megatron arguing on top of our Jewelers building. The Sentinel says raise the bridges, and all of our bridges raise up at the same time. Originally built to be Jewelers offices in the 20s, this building had a special security feature, an elevator that would bring a jeweler's car from Lower Wacker Drive as high as the 22nd floor, where that jeweler would have the protection of the building around him as he moved his expensive cargo from his car to his jeweler's office. You can see these cupolas on the four corners. They look like vases, and they were originally part of its fire suppression system. They held water tanks that would rain that water down on the sides of the building had it ever caught on fire. Never used for that purpose, the water tanks were removed. You can now see windows, and those windows are for boardrooms. But right across the river from it, you get a quick peek at Mies van der Rohe's AMA building. Originally built to be the headquarters for IBM, today this is for the American Medical Association. Designed by Mies van der Rohe, who is known for his precision architecture and for popularizing the use of the glass curtain wall. You can sum up his entire attitude towards architecture with two of his famous quotes. One of them is "God is in the details." The other one is "Less is more." Very detailed
Car parking.
He believed in using as little as possible to accomplish his goals. One of his very last pieces of work. In fact, he would not live to see it completed, but he did have the honor of knowing one of his last pieces of work would be on display right next to one of his students' most famous pieces of work, Bertrand Goldberg's Marina City Towers. This is what we commonly call the corn cobs in downtown Chicago, designed by Bertrand Goldberg, who grew up in this city. He wanted to help us out with a little problem we were facing in the 60s. Nobody wanted to live downtown. They all wanted to be in the suburbs with a nice front yard and a two-car garage. So Bertrand Goldberg bet that if he could combine everything he needed into just one structure, this would give people a reason to move downtown. So here we've got dry cleaners, restaurants, places to shop. That rectangular building is the Hotel Chicago, and there is a marina at the river level. You can live, work, shop, and play, all right here at the Marina City Towers. But if you get bored doing that, you've got the rest of Chicago around you. And if you've ever seen the movie The Hunter with Steve McQueen, you've seen a car drive off this parking garage into the Chicago River. But if you were to park your car here, you've got nothing to worry about. A valet backs your car into that spot for you. And on the left-hand side, there's this tall white building. For a long time, it was called the United Building. It was the headquarters for United Airlines. They moved over to the Sears or Willis Towers, so today we call it 77 West Wacker. Designed by Ricardo Bofill. He wanted to invoke the Parthenon and Athens Greece reaching up into the heavens. Use these Doric columns coming up to the pediment and the reflective glass to create the illusion. You're looking right through this structure, seeing the sky behind it. I'd also like to draw your attention to the corners of this building. Notice how they indented were, but rather than eliminate the corner office, they did this to double them. 8 corner offices per floor instead of the 4 you would normally have. But coming up on the right-hand side is some older architecture. Standing in Chicago since 1914, George C. Nimitz Reed Murdoch Building. It's a Chicago-style commercial building with some Prairie-style accents. Throughout the years, it has been used as a market warehouse. Later, it was City Traffic Court, but today, it is the headquarters for Encyclopedia Britannica. For the younger people on the boat, Encyclopedia Britannica, it's like Wikipedia, but in books. And let's count the window wells on the front. You see 5 on the right-hand side, only 4 on the left. It was an equal number on each side, but as they were designing the LaSalle Street Bridge, they needed more room to widen LaSalle, so they chopped off this left side and rebuilt. This left side is newer than the right-hand side. Did you know the very first ever skyscraper was built right here on LaSalle Street? Just a little bit south of where we are right now was the Home Insurance Building, designed by William LeBaron Jennings. It only stood at 10 stories tall, but technically it was a skyscraper because it featured an inner skeletal structure, often referred to as a Chicago skeleton, because we used it for the first time. William LeBaron Jennings hired and trained a team of amazing architects. Most of them designed some very similar looking buildings. Here's a great example on the right hand side with the Helene Curtis. This tripartite or three-part facade designed to resemble a Greek column with a strong solid base anchoring into the ground, straight lines racing upward to emphasize the height, and a well-decorated capitol. We call this the first school of Chicago-style architecture because it is the first style of architecture created and popularized by Chicago architects. Right next to it, the Merchandise Mart was the largest building in the entire world when it first opened up in 1930 with over 4 million square feet. Kept that title for 13 years until the Pentagon was completed, built for Marshall Field and Company to combine 13 warehouses into just one building, a building so large had an entire zip code, police and fire department dedicated to this building alone. You can see heads on top of pillars. We call this the Merchandise Mart Hall of Fame. They're in the likeness of Captain Merchants in Chicago's history. People like Julius Rosenwald of Sears Roebuck, Franklin Woolworth, Marshall Field, and Aaron Montgomery Ward. David Letterman once jokingly called this the Pez Hall of Fame. But I've never tried to push those heads back to see if any Pez comes out. Today you'd find showrooms, radio stations, and tech companies here at the Merchandise Mart, like the headquarter offices of Motorola, who created the very first cell phone and the first car radio right here in the city of Chicago. But now we're coming to Chicago's Wolf Point. And after DeSable built the first permanent residence at Pioneer Court, this was the first area to populate. Saw our first couple thousand log cabins and cottages in this area. But then, for a long time, this area was ignored. All we saw was train tracks and warehouses. Today, Chicagoans are moving back. Brand new residential apartment building here on the right-hand side, Wolf Point West by BKL Architects. In fact, you can see some construction going on for Wolf Point East on the right-hand side as well. If you wanted an apartment for a 2-bedroom right here at Wolf Point West, starts at $5,000 a month. Gets closer to $10,000 a month towards the top. Yes, you guessed it. This is where I don't live. But Wolf Point is where the main branch of the Chicago River meets the north and the south branch. Looks like a Y when you look at it on a map, and it's recognized in our Chicago logo or municipal device, which is a Y with a circle around it. You'll find them all over the city. In fact, on the left-hand side, even some architects are getting involved. We see a skyscraper in the shape of a Y right here at Wolf Point. Right next to it, we've got River Point by Picard Chilton. Love this arch at the bottom of the building. It's symbolic of where this water is headed, towards the Mississippi, past St. Louis. That convex shape increases the surface area to allow more natural light in, while offering a panoramic reflection of the city around it. But on the right-hand side, you can see that Chicago logo repeated along this railing right here. Sometimes you'll see this Y flipped upside down, a celebration of the fact they reversed the flow of the Chicago River. And coming up on the left-hand side is the oldest building I'm going to talk about on the tour today, this red brick building, the Fulton House. When it first opened up in 1898, this was a warehouse with 4-foot thick walls to be completely fireproof. And then in our Chicago stockyards provided about 80% of the beef and pork to the entire country. This became a cold storage building, converted in 1908. They needed, when it was no longer needed for that, Chicago architect Harry Lease converted this to condos, needed 500 semis to haul away all the cork and horsehair. They used to insulate this building in a wrecking ball to punch the holes for the newer windows. You can see how the balconies were cut into the 4-foot thick walls. Right across the river from it, you see this old railroad bridge used by Northwestern Railroad for freight trains across the river. The bridge was out of use by the end of the year 2000, but it's an example of one of our earliest movable bridges here in Chicago. So it's become a landmark. They lower it and raise it once a year just to keep it operational. The freight trains used to cross right here and run behind the Merchandise Mart, right through those 2 buildings of the Wrigley, all the way down to Navy Pier. Just beyond the left-hand side, these river cottages, also designed by windows that look like portholes for a boat, and the window wells look like the hull of a ship. People thought Airbnbs was crazy for putting cottages on the Chicago River in the early 80s when this was all industrial, but not everybody thought he was crazy. One of these four just sold for $2.2 million. And as we go underneath the Kinzie Street Bridge, I'm going to drop the mic for just a second. Shoreline has decided not to use a PA north of the Kinzie Street Bridge. This will give you a chance to use the bathroom, visit the bar, or ask me any questions you might have. In fact, I'll take a little walk around to see if you have any questions, and I'll be back on the mic as soon as we come back under the Kinzie Street Bridge.
ಹೊಸ ಡೆಸ್ಟಿನೇಷನ್ ಆಗಾಗ್ಯಾವ
ಕಳಿಸಿದರೆ ಸಾಕು ಸಿಟ್ಟಾಗ ನೋಡ್ದಂಗೆ ಆಗ್ತಾಯಿದೆ.